Hi everybody and welcome to our show. This is your real estate quest where we're hopefully helping you on your real estate journey. My name is Haelee. Just a little bit of background. I recently kind of started my own business. I'm out of my 9-to-5 and have decided that I want to own a house. I don't know how to do that, so I'm gonna learn and you're gonna come with me. We've got Kevin and Haelee here today. If you guys would give us just a couple sentence intro about who you are and what you do.
I'm Kevin and I'm a mortgage lender. I've been lending in Colorado Springs for the last 30 years, was born and raised here.
I'm Haelee and I've been a realtor now for 10 years. My background before that was a licensed professional counselor, so I did mental health counseling and then transferred over to real estate.
Thanks. So we're just gonna dive right into this. This first part is really about deciding, or the decision process, I suppose, in buying a house. We've kind of already talked about this, so I know where these answers lead, but we're gonna do this anyway. How do I know what I can afford? Because I have student loans. I've been told you can't buy a house with student loans. How do I even start this?
So I would say the first thing that you would want to do is talk to a lender and get pre-qualified, because there's a lot of myths out there. You just mentioned the student loans. There's another myth that you have to have 20% down. None of those are actually applicable. We have dozens of loan programs where we can get people in with as little as $1,000.
At the end of it all, we decided that I'm going to look at about $350,000. It's going to take about
2 years.
2 years. Okay.
So we normally need 2 years tax returns for self-employed, commission, bonus, anything other than W-2 income. We need a 2-year history. If the business has been open for 5 years, then we can do it with just 1 year. But we have to prove that it was opened. There are some programs out there called bank statement loans and stated loans that will allow you to do things a little bit different, but rates and costs on those are a lot higher.
Okay. And you mentioned that 20% down is a myth, which is great. I don't have 70,000 just sitting around. I maybe wouldn't be doing a YouTube channel if I did. So what should people kind of expect as a down, or is that just so individual that we can't even?
No. So let's just say you're a military or you're a veteran. It's zero down. And we can negotiate even, or Haelee can negotiate seller paying closing costs. So VA, you can actually get in with no money. If you're an FHA buyer, which is typically your first time home buyer, it's 3.5% down. Again, we can always ask seller to pay closing costs depending on market conditions, but 3.5%. That does not have to be your own money. It can come from a gift. Conventional, you can do with 3% down to 20. Obviously, the more you put down, the lower the rate, the better the terms.
Okay. Not gonna lie, I didn't understand a lot of that, but we're going to sit down later and I'm just gonna ask you all the stupidest questions and we're gonna really, really deep dive into it. So we're just gonna pretend that I followed all of that. But it looks like talk to the professional. Professional was gonna fit my budget better.
Right.
And they'll help guide you to the best solution for you too.
Okay. Do you work with the lender to help come up with this number, or do you as the real estate agent advise on knowing what I can afford, or do you have any extra thoughts to add to that, I guess?
We both have very different sets to our job, but we work together so often that we sort of know what the other one is needing. So some of the conversations I will have with you is what you want your budget to be. And if you've been renting, you know, I like this amount, this would be stressing me. I can then help you have the conversation with the lender because you may qualify for more than you actually want to spend. And so then, and he'll ask you those questions too. If you want to be at $2,200 a month, we could set that budget then from that number.
Okay. On that, so my previous career, I guess, was actually in neuroscience, so I am one who really loves graphs. I gave you guys a copy. Hector, would it be possible if we put this up here somewhere? Okay, awesome. Everybody say thank you, Hector. We
Thank you, Hector.
Appreciate you.
We love you, Hector.
So I did limited research. I am not a professional. I don't totally know what I'm doing. Please let me know if I did something just horribly wrong. Looking at rental costs in Colorado Springs, which is where we're at. Your mileage may vary. I don't know where you live. I can't speak for you. So it looks like on average, rental rates in Colorado Springs have been increasing about 5% a year. Does that sound accurate? I don't know how much you work with rentals, but.
I would be hesitant to say that. I mean, I watch it go up every year, and I know working with my investors and that it usually goes up $50 to $100 from what it was last year. I have not done the math on that to say yes or no exactly.
Okay.
I think it is about 5%. And the reason I say that, because it's kind of the same as the appreciation in a house that you would buy. And those on average, I think is like 4.6%.
Okay. So would you mind helping me kind of walk through some of these graphics and look at financially renting versus buying, what that looks like? I did a little digging, and it looks like for a 3-bedroom house in Colorado Springs, $2,200 is going to get you something relatively decent. I actually pay more than that in rent. So that's where I started with all of this, and then looking at that $350,000 purchase that we talked about earlier.
Right.
So we're comparing the cost of renting of a standard 3-bedroom house versus the overall cost of buying a $350,000 house over 10 years?
Yes.
Okay.
So I can talk a little bit about the graph.
Please, that would be
so
awesome.
If the average rent is about $2,200, a $350,000 house, I think is going to put your payment right under $2,500. So it's about a $300 difference. So looking on the surface, it seems like you're saving $300 a month. But when you take it over the full 10 years and you see that rent going up and you're not getting anything back in return as far as appreciation, at some point you're actually paying more in rent than you would be paying for the house. And then you're also not getting the appreciation in the value of the home. There's like your own personal savings account that part of your house payment is going to every month. So in my opinion, you know, people ask, when is the right time to buy? The right time to buy is one, when you are comfortable and when you can and you're ready. But mathematically, based on this scenario, you're going to end up making a lot more money, and I haven't even factored in the tax deduction yet.
Okay. So I did actually kind of look. It was difficult to figure out what the monthly payment for a mortgage, or for what your what the monthly payment was going to look like in year 10 or year 9 for the purchase, because I know some of that is determined by tax and insurance, but a little bit of digging says that that doesn't change too drastically, at least not in the 5% range that the rent looks like it is. So I did just kind of pick a couple of points to increase that sum and added up what you end up paying. And in those 10 years, renting, it ends up being about $330,000. And buying, it's about $302,000. That is not how much you have paid down on the value of the house. That is just the amount of money you have paid. I don't want anybody coming for me.
So just on the very basics, over the course of 10 years, you still pay more in rent because your mortgage won't go up as fast. Your principal and interest is fixed unless you were to refinance it for some reason. Your taxes and insurance, which are also rolled into that monthly mortgage payment, those will increase slowly over time, but not quite at the rate historically as your rent will.
Okay. And then we'll probably talk about this more when you and I sit down to actually really talk about numbers, or possibly a little bit later on when we're talking about the home buying process. Okay. But can you speak a little bit about the appreciation value and kind of what that means?
Right. Well, I can say that after Haelee just explained, or I think you did, $330,000 in rent versus $302,000 in mortgage payment. Right there, you've saved over that 10 years, $28,000. But if you're also earning 5% on that house, that's about $17,500 a year times 10 years. That house will be worth about $175,000 more. And you won't get that in rent.
Which is about what your graph's showing, that it's close to $200,000 of appreciation. So now you have that in equity.
Okay.
You don't have it in your savings account.
Yeah.
It's not in your checking account, but it's in equity, and it is a type of a savings account that you have. So now you've paid your mortgage down some, your house has appreciated some, and that entire gap is now equity in your asset account.
Okay.
And when you're shopping too, I mean, this is something for a first-time home buyer to think about. There are some areas and some types of property that you're more likely to get that appreciation too. So if you're handy around the house and you're not afraid to do some minor remodeling, you might find a lower priced fixer-upper, put that, what we call sweat equity in, because you're capable of painting and putting some new vinyl plank down and upgrading some things over the course of your house. That can help it appreciate. A lot of times if you get into a new build area, in the first 10% of the houses, if there's at least 30 to 40 properties going up in a new build area and you get in on that first 10%, you usually see a pretty good, there's a fast appreciation there, and then it levels off for a while. The life cycle of a housing area starts, fast appreciation, plateaus for a while, then somewhere around year 20, it drops back down, and it will kind of depreciate for a while, and then it's old enough to be cool again. So if you hit the neighborhoods that now are late 70s and early 80s, they're getting old enough to be cool again. You get in now, pretty soon that's where the flippers will start coming in, new buyers come in and start renovating, and then you see that appreciation go back up. So if you can hit one of these cycles and ride appreciation as well, just within the life cycle of a property, not even, that's outside of whatever economics are doing.
Okay. So all of this really makes it sound like buying a house is just flat better, which you guys are in the home buying career field, so probably have some biases towards that. Are there situations where it's better to not? Like where at this point in time, it is just better to keep renting?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I know Haelee's going to talk about this, excuse me, but if you're not going to be there very long and you think you're going to be moving, within the next 2 years, you have to be aware of capital gains taxes. You have to be ready to buy, make sure your debt to income ratio is right, and talk to a lender.
Definitely, if you're not going to be there very long, for sure. Unless you want to keep it as a rental. So those are questions to map out with your team. I would also say if you're not confident about your job, or if you think, you might be doing a career change that drastically changes your income. And that could even be, we're planning a baby in the next year, and I think my wife wants to stay home, or my husband wants to stay home for a while. So if you're thinking of really drastically reducing your income, I would maybe use that as a marker point too, as not the world's best time. But sometimes you're moving to a new town and you don't know the area very well. Maybe it makes the most sense to rent for 6 months or a year. Figure out where you're at, figure out where your job is, what your commute is, what you like to do. Now you've got a whole new community, new lifestyle of what you're doing on the weekends. Then you would know where you want to be too. So there are some good reasons to rent for a while versus buy.
It sounds like a lot of thought really goes into this process even before you get off the ground.
I think there's a lot of questions, and that's why you build your team. I mean, as we have more conversations here, I really want to emphasize the superpowers that you get when you build a whole team. When you have somebody that hears what your goals are, they ask you the right questions, they ask you questions you haven't thought of yet. They help you sort through numbers. Sometimes there's easy solutions with the financial side that, hey, you can use this savings account to pay off this car, now your budget looks like this. And when you've got all those experts working for you, that's when you'll know what the right time is. Because they're also, this is the biggest purchase of your life. I can't imagine you're probably going to ever spend more on a car than you are on your house.
Right.
And so before you do this, you really need to think through, be prepared, and be smart about what this is. Because this purchase, especially this first time one, so important. Because it can set you on that track to appreciation, or it can put you into real financial distress, which is why you hear those myths, because somebody's been led into a house purchase that wasn't right for them.
Right.
Okay. So this still sounds like it's kind of a big and overwhelming process. I'm glad to have you guys going through with me, and I'm just going to drag all of you along. Welcome. We are close to a wrap time on this. I'm going to put your contact information up here in case anybody else wants to utilize your expert advice. I do, however, want to cycle back because you said something that I really liked and I think will be a really good end note.
Okay.
How do I know when it is the right time to buy?
So when it is the right time, I mean, it depends because some people say interest rates have to be low, but usually when interest rates are low, prices are high. Some say when prices are a little bit higher or a little bit lower, because then you're going to get a higher interest rate. But remember, you can always refinance and you can do it with no cost. So my theory is date the rate, marry the house.
I think the right time to buy, okay, the cheesy saying is it's the same as planting a tree. When's the right time to buy it or to plant a tree? 20 years ago. Everybody can look back at housing and wish they bought something 20 years ago. When's the second best time? Today. So yes, if you're thinking about getting into the housing market, I would say get into the housing market. The best time is now, with the caveat that it's the best time for you. So all those other factors need to come into play. You need to have your finances in order. You don't want this to be a financial strain. You want this to be a financial asset.
Okay. So the best time to buy is when it's right for you.
When it's right for you.
All right. Well, I'm really looking forward to digging into this a little bit more. We'll talk with you next about real estate agent. We'll talk with you later, but I want to talk about houses before we talk about money.
Yeah, looking at houses and buying a house is a lot more fun than the financing.
But
we can make that fun and
we will
easy
come
too.
back. See you later.